20 minutes for the hour, 866-99 Sirius. Folks, join us now if you would on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Make it plain. Please, ma'am. Please, sir. Very special guest in studio. She spoke at the Women's March. We were just now trying to remember where was the last place we saw each other. But as she said, I guess we've seen each other at somebody's event. You move around so much.
You do.
It all starts to run together. I saw somebody else. I'm to be honest with you. I saw somebody at something the other night at the Apollo. They had the Apollo Spring Gala. I saw a few people. Hey, Mark, how you doing? I can remember last place I saw them. It was terrible. One person, I'm not even going to tell you who was very famous and significant. And somebody said, it was Joe Madison. He said, Mark, you know who that was, right? I said, yeah, it looks familiar. And he told me, I was so embarrassed. I didn't know what. But anyway, it's just how it is sometimes when you're busy. How are you, Donna Hylton? Donna Hylton is here. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Donna has a brand new book out entitled A Little Piece of Light, a memoir of hope, prison, and a life unbound. Welcome to Sirius XM.
Thank you. Okay.
You have quite a story. So let's get right into it. You spent 25 years in prison.
27.
27.
Years in prison, yes.
As long as Nelson Mandela spent in prison. I think he was in prison 27 years.
Quite a parallel, right?
Tell us that story. How did you end up in prison?
So the trajectory that landed me in prison was basically abuse and violence and trauma. I was brought to this country by a couple who weren't able to have children of their own, and so
from Jamaica, right.
West Indies, not Jamaica, Queens. And
when I saw they say you were from Jamaica, I had to be clear because we're in New York. People say they're from Jamaica. That don't necessarily mean
yeah, right. I had to make sure Jamaica,
right.
West Indies,
right.
And so I find out later that I was actually sold to this couple, and by the time I turned nine and a half, I was being taken into a closet and being raped by the man that had become my father. And it just started going from there. No one would help me. I reached out to my counselor at school when I was 12. My mother by that time, had become one of New York State's mental health directors. And she created a narrative for me and made me a liar, basically, because you don't want to say what's going on in your home. I don't even want to make excuses for them or any kind of, And it was downhill from there. I just kept landing into basically the arms of many abusers. I didn't have any positive or any healthy relationships to help guide me out of that. I was a kid and no one was helping the child that needed help from being raped and sodomized by those around her.
So you were charged with something having to do with kidnapping and murder.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about that, how that came
So what happened, by this time, I'm a little older, not much. I have a daughter.
How old were you?
Well, I got pregnant at 15. My daughter is a product of rape. I had ran away, thought someone was going to help me, an older man. He was 10 years, 11 years my senior. He became one of my worst abusers. And I have a daughter because of that, and she's a product of rape. So by the time I was 16, I just turned 16, I had my daughter, and I was trying to figure a way out. I didn't have a home. I was staying with friends. I had let my daughter stay with the people that adopted me, the Hyltons, and I was trying to figure it out, but nobody would help me. Nobody would help me. And I met someone when I was working. I have a series of temporary jobs, temp jobs. And I met another young woman, Delita Pullins at the time, and she was modeling, and I was like, wow. So she told me. So I was looking for people to help me because I didn't know what to do. As smart as I was academically, was as socially inept because I didn't have any positive role models or anything healthy around me, and she was. And so I wanted to follow in her footsteps. I felt like that was something that I could do, that no one would hurt me, I wouldn't be abused. And so I tried. I was doing that, and I was working at, by that time I was working at one of the hotel's gift shop for a temp job, and I met my soon-to-be co-defendant, and she led me to believe that she would help me along with her godfather, and it turned into something way beyond my control. Bottom line was, I was told if I would help, they would help me with my modeling career if I would witness a blackmail scheme. And so I said, okay. That's where I went wrong, and I take full responsibility for saying okay. But you don't see things as being abnormal and crazy when you're so used to craziness around you, and you're struggling, and you're anything that looks possible for you. You do. We make those mistakes not just as kids, but as people.
Okay.
And I did that, and by the time I couldn't do anything about it. It was actually a kidnapping when I walked into the place where I was supposed to witness an intimate scene between the victim in the crime, Mr. V, and my co-defendant, who became my co-defendant, Maria. It had already turned into a kidnapping. And at that moment, I became a victim myself in the crime. But you would not know that because we don't have any separations within our judicial system of who's a victim, who's not.
Right. And it's been documented your role in that crime was pretty much negligible, right? You just kind of got swept up.
I just got swept up, but you wouldn't know an accessory. There should be distinctions, clear distinctions, and that's why I focus on sentencing reform as well in my work, because we have to look at people individually and see their role and what they do instead of being swept up all together because we have so many people in prisons and jails. Right.
So as a result of that situation, You were you charged with the kidnapping or was it accessory kidnapping?
No, there's no accessory charge. They basically the same. So I have kidnapping and murder. Even though it's known that I didn't do anything to Mr. V. I never heard of him. Nothing.
And that was known even in the legal proceedings.
It was absolutely known. And what I found out the other day, which I had forgotten because of the trauma, was that my grand jury hearing the testimonies by the police officers, they stated very clearly in the grand jury hearing testimony that they beat me into saying whatever I said. I don't even know what I said. I can't even remember. I was held detained by them for like 38 hours. I hadn't eaten. I was still young, hadn't eaten, hadn't made a phone call.
How old were you at that time?
I had just turned 20. So, I mean, basically, I am still a minor because when I was sent to Rikers Island, I was placed in the adolescent unit. So I was still a minor, but I was never allowed to make a phone call. It wouldn't have mattered anyway with the couple, obviously. But no, I had no one to tell me how the system works. I've never been arrested in my life. Never had any kind of trouble. This was it. And I had no clue whatsoever with the judicial system and how that works, or the police.
So you went to prison for 27 years. Where were you incarcerated?
I was incarcerated in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility in New York State, the only max for women. You don't need any more.
Maximum.
Yes.
Security. So, the popular show is Orange is the New Black. This is a real life story.
Yes.
So you know about that. So 27 years. Were you abused in prison?
Yes. There was a point where I was my daughter she was raped and sodomized by a family member. And that was like my lowest moment in my life because I didn't want that to happen to my daughter. I love my daughter regardless of how she got here. I love my daughter, and I never wanted what happened to me to happen to her, and it did. And that was the lowest moment of my life. And because of that, there was an official there who took advantage of that because he was given basically he was in charge of my case with my daughter, because I needed the help of the administration, and he took advantage of it, and he became a stalker, and he became very abusive. He used the situation to...
So wait a minute now. This is someone who works in the prison.
Yes, absolutely.
Who was trying to help you with your daughter
Supposedly,
through her
he
assault.
was given the order from the superintendent, who was a warden, to handle my case with my daughter, because I had to call Child Protective Services. I had to make sure she went to the hospital. It was so many things that was going on with my daughter, and he was in charge of it, because I had to make phone calls. And in prison, you don't just make phone calls from a regular phone. You have to go through channels. So he was able to get me to a phone when I needed it. If the Child Protective Services called me, and police, yes.
So he was supposed to help you deal with your daughter's abuse, and he ended up abusing you.
Yes, he did. He took advantage of the situation when I was going through my own healing for my own trauma, and when that happened, I became that young girl again who was abused, because you never want to believe that could happen to your child. You know, bad enough it happened to you, but it just, when you're a mother, something else happens, and I blame myself, and I still hadn't healed. I still hadn't healed fully. I was young enough to, like, you know, and he just became, he took advantage.
Donna Hylton with us, folks, about 8 minutes before the hour, A Little Piece of Light, a memoir of hope, prison, and a life unbound. So 27 years, was that the time you were sentenced to serve? You served the full time?
No, I was sentenced to 25 years to life for the 2 crimes of kidnapping and murder. No other charges is what's been put out there and said. That was it.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So you got out parole? Is that?
Yes, I was. Okay. I was finally. I went to the parole board after my 25 years, and you think that I would have gotten out, because technically, legally, you're supposed to get out at the 25-year mark, but that's not what happened. I was hit with another 2 years. I went through a series of boards. I went to 4 boards within like 3 months. And very horrible situation. But I was finally able to get out because I had a group of people fighting for me. Sister Mary Nerney, who I dedicated the book to and my work to, my mother, and Jeremy Benjamin, Jaya Vasadani, and a bunch of others that came together. And I have to say Robert Dennison, who was the former chairman of New York State Parole, who helped me because they believed.
Yeah. So you went in at 20. So your whole youth, so to speak, was spent in prison.
My whole youth. So I like to say this.
Okay.
I was in prison before I was in prison. When I got to this country, I was not allowed to go outside and play with other kids. I was never able to interact and learn anything when I was brought to this country outside of school. I was locked in, didn't have keys to get in or out. I didn't have any social skills. You know, back in the day, you'd wear the color of the day, you listen to the radio. I had to listen to certain radio stations, classical, opera, stuff like that, which I actually like, but I would go to school and I wouldn't know what was going on with it. I was in prison before I went to prison, so there are many prisons.
To extend the metaphor then, Donna Hylton, are you completely out of prison now?
Absolutely.
Today?
6 years.
So how have you gotten, because y'all heard what she said, she was in prison before she was in prison. When did you, so 6 years?
6 years now, yes.
So that's beyond the 27, I think, right?
So, so 6 years free, because before I went to prison, so for the first 18, 19 years of my life, I was in a prison. Because even before I came to this country, I was with my natural mother, still love my mother, but she was very abusive. And as a kid, as free as I was, I didn't realize the prison I was in because of the abuse and my mother's mental health, which I see now, recognize she had some issues, but I was actually a little freer in Jamaica. But I would not have, I was a child and couldn't grasp that concept. But now, being mature and understanding and being healthy, I'm definitely free.
So, well, let me do this, folks. We're going to take a break on the radio broadcast. But I'm going to continue with my conversation with Donna Hylton on our social media. So you want to tune in, sort of a Oprah after the show thing. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, make it plain. Go ahead and bring us up there now so you can hear the rest of our discussion. If you're listening on the radio, we're talking about A Little Piece of Light, a memoir of hope, prison, and a life unbound, by Donna Hylton. An incredible story, a real story. I mean, we look at a lot of the other stories about prison life, and pardon me, obviously one of the most popular shows is Orange is the New Black, but this is the real deal. So we'll continue our conversation on our social media, and we'll be back on the radio momentarily. Sirius XM Progress 127 Resistance Radio. Get woke, get ready for impeachment. Now,
That's good.
what? Yeah, it's not even, Maxine Waters gave us that. That's a greeting.
Okay,
That's what she's.
That's right.
So when you speak to somebody, we say, "Good morning, how are you?" Get ready for impeachment. I mean, it's kind of a
second nature. It's like second.
It's
all right,
Try it. Try it on friends.
Right,
when you also go out and see people today. Hey, how you doing this month? Fine. How are you? Get ready for impeachment. All right. And it just brightens up the day. You should try it. So that's what we do.
Smile.
Yeah, that's how. So we see. Look at you smiling. So how did you get free?
So how did I get free? Well, it took a lot of work. Really free. It took a lot of work. I had to. I spent 2.5 years total in solitary confinement during my incarceration, and in those moments, I was in a very more abnormal environment than I was just being in the prison. And you have nothing to do but to face yourself, bare, no makeup, nothing, right? If there is such a thing really as makeup in prison. Mm-hmm. And you just have yourself. And I carried Mr. V, and I still carry Mr. V, who was the victim in the crime, with mm-hmm. me. And I just did not understand how I even got to where I was. I couldn't get it. I couldn't grasp it. But what I first had to do was talk to him, was to bring him, closer to me. And I started there, and that's why the book starts there. Mm-hmm, say his name. Mm-hmm. I always say his name. Mm-hmm. I have to say that, people don't understand how they can continue hurt. I don't try to bring hurt to him or any of his family or friends. I honor him. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because too many victims. There are many types of victims. I was a victim. He was a victim. And I honor that. And to recognize that, I had to recognize the humanity in him and then in myself. And that's how I started. And it took many years. It didn't happen overnight because there was a lot of stuff I had to work through. Right. And I forgave everyone. Everyone. That was where my freedom started. When I started forgiving, I had the ability to forgive. And we have it. If we tap into that light, we tap into it. We were not born for the most part. We were not born ugly, dark, and we were born with love. The whole creation story is about love. I don't care which creation story you want to believe in. Right. It's all about love.
And so since then, you've also dedicated your life and work to prison reform, sentencing reform, and all of the above, right?
Yes, and there are differences. I must say that right now. There are differences with these reforms. Criminal justice reform is the umbrella, but you have prison reform, sentencing reform, you have clemencies, you have pardons, you have so many things. The judicial system, you have reforms that are needed there, legal systems, you have reform. There are different distinctions with them.
Folks, the book, A Little Piece of Light, a memoir of hope, prison, and a life unbound. As you do the work you do, where can people find you, get in touch with you, help? I mean, are you kind of building a movement, or are you doing this pretty much on your own?
Well, actually, I've been doing it on my own. Okay. And I have to say this, the other day, I was invited to the White House to be a part of a contingent to talk about the prison reform. And I was shut out. I was left in the rain.
No, you weren't.
And so,
Not at this White House.
Yeah. But I was a contingent of formerly incarcerated people, diverse crimes, diverse situations, but I was left out in the cold, in the rain, and I strongly believe, because I spoke at the march and what that represents, right? And so
they invited you?
I was invited by the people that were working along with the White House and Jared Kushner to talk about prison reform.
And when you got there,
And when I got there, the Secret Service let me know that I had a do not admit flag by my name. And so I was not allowed to go up the steps into the White House, and I had to immediately leave in the rain. And so I have to say that when I saw and found out that Kim Kardashian West had was invited to speak about prison reform, the expert that she is, I have to say I appreciate the effort. I appreciate the fight and the argument for Miss Alice Johnson, because she definitely needs to get out. But we have to be very clear that we don't send a message that you must have some celebrity backing in order to be recognized on the merits, to be released from prison and to get some kind of compassion or clemency or pardon. They're different things, and we have to make those distinctions. They're very different. And so we have to be clear in that. And that's my concern, that we don't start a trend that if you're not the cause celeb, that you're not given the opportunity to be pardoned, to have clemency, to have your sentence reduced. We just have to be very clear. There are thousands of women and girls and men.
Yeah. I wish we had more time, but this is truly an incredible story. Is there a website where people can go and hear more about it? Please.
Yes. So my website is DonnaHylton.com, DonnaHylton.com. That's my website. Everything that you need to know about me, for the most part, is on my website. And even to purchase the book, there's a link on my website to take you straight to the link to purchase my book, A Little Piece of Light. And I am on except for Tumblr and all these other things, I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by my name. I don't hide it. I am who I am.
Okay, wonderful. Donna Hylton, folks, please share this video, share her story. Go to DonnaHylton.com, Donna Hylton with a Y. A Little Piece of Light, a memoir of hope, prison, and a life unbound. Yes.
And one more thing, and you can also go to my publisher's website, Hachette Books. Hachette is my publisher, and you can go on theirs and you can purchase the book there as well and see more about me.
All right. Thank you, Donna. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate you. All right.
You remember me now.
I do. I can't forget. Bless your heart, and thank you.
Thank you.